Okay, in this note, you're writing a follow-up note for a family.
Yes.
And so this is the second visit, and it's based upon the example of knowing a little bit of what happened in the initial session and then them coming in and saying what they did in between. So you start with the date and location and client name. Those are very well done. And the status of the presenting problem. You did a good job basically summarizing what occurred in the meeting that they were going to have together to talk about what was happening to them in their own lives, as well as the chore situations. So they reported they talked to each other, which they did. They met the previous Wednesday as planned. Mrs. Baker was unable to attend the meeting,
Right.
which we were disappointed about, but it seems to be that's what's going on in this family. Mr. Baker would like the family to be happy, feel satisfied, have peace in the household. Okay, that's exactly what he said. Dan likes his chores. Megan would like Mrs. Baker to be around more, would also like Mr. Baker to calm down. Okay, so that's really good. It summarizes what they said.
Right.
Now, when you get to the intervention, one of the things that I noticed here is the intervention as well as the plan were very similar.
Okay.
And part of it is I think that you were interpreting intervention a little bit differently. Intervention at this point means what actually occurred during the session
Okay.
to help the family, where the plan generally refers to what is going to happen after the session
Okay.
to help the family. Now, one of the difficulties is that it wasn't necessarily real obvious when you were watching the video that intervention was happening because they were saying things, and as long as they were saying things, what you were looking for is how that was all coming together and how the questions were pulling them together. And so one of the things is that it helps if you know what the worker's goal was, even though you wrote that as if it was your goal. The point at this point was helping them to take what they had talked about and to reach kind of the areas that they agree upon, the areas that they could work on. So you're looking for specifics about what they can do to help themselves even more. And you're paying attention to what they say. So there was a few things that were really important. They communicate expectations regarding each behavior. Well, actually, they did do that. They didn't really negotiate acceptable family rules and consequences, but they started talking about them. One of the things that you may have noticed from the interviews, both Dan and Megan said they wanted mom around more.
Yes.
And so the fact that that was said, you can lead into a discussion of how can they get mom around more.
Sure.
And so that's one thing that the intervention is saying, okay, are there ways that we could do that?
Right.
So part of the intervention for Dan was, well, why can't he just make an appointment for his mother?
Yeah.
And his dad said, yes, you can talk to mom's secretary and do that. So with Dan, we could very specifically say that. So the intervention is to show Dan that he could have an appointment with his mother, that he could talk with her about this. The plan then later on in the note is going to say, okay, how's he going to do that?
Right.
And this is something that's going to happen afterwards. Now, for Megan, it's basically, you mentioned that she doesn't know why he wants to know the details.
Right.
Okay, and she said that before, but he actually gave a number of different reasons why he wants to know the details. He says, well, who do I call if you're not home? Well, call me. Well, what happens if you don't answer? Who do I call then? And I think that she paused, and it kind of let her know that he was just looking for a way that he could check up on her. I think Dan mentioned that that was reasonable. Unfortunately, Dan's not real good at being supportive. He's being good at criticizing.
Right.
So that's not a real helpful thing. But one of the things that came up is Dan saying, I want to know who your friends are. And so that's what you could describe as part of the intervention, because what that did is it led into something. Megan said, okay, I don't want to invite my friends over because, it's not a good atmosphere. Dan's not going to be nice.
Yep.
You're going to be, giving them the, 20 questions and things like that. So by focusing on, well, what would it take from what kind of behavior do you need from Dad, from Dan, and which one of your friends would actually handle it the best? Because so the intervention is helping Megan identify how could she have somebody come over, which is her father's goal, but how could she do that and yet feel like it was a test?
Right.
And so that's the intervention part is we actually describe how that occurred during the session. The assessment is fine. One of the things about the assessment here in follow-up note is that it says much the same type of thing as was in the initial assessment note in terms of normal adolescent parent tension and household responsibilities and listening and things like that. A lot of that was there. What you would tend to put in an assessment for a follow-up note is if it's changed or there's other things that you want to assess. Like you could have put in here, it seemed like daughter was willing to work with father. That's something that we weren't sure about in the initial session. So that's something you could put in your assessment part, is it seems like she is willing to work with him. And it seems like he's willing to work with her a little bit. Because he pushed Dan, you got to be nice when the friend comes over, okay? So the plan, objective 1, Megan will invite her best friend Sarah. Okay, that's good. The method is good. Mr. Baker and Dan will greet Sarah, have a pleasant interaction. Then they'll go about their business. Okay, so that's good. The timeline, that's good because it's going to happen within the next week or so. Objective 2, Dan will make an appointment with his mother. Okay, that's really good. Now you notice now these things all make sense and they're not so much repeated from intervention.
Exactly.
The intervention explained how you got here. And then change chore assignments, roles, and responsibilities. The family have a discussion about this. That's the third thing. And that's really helpful because there's 3 different things they're going to do, and they're going to have a couple of weeks to do that because there's going to be a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. So you've got your timeline there. When you go to see the family in 2 weeks, all you got to do is look at the plan and you'll know, okay, here's what I expect them to come in and talk about. And if there's some details you don't have, then you can go and read the stuff that was written earlier. But just reading the plan will say, okay, I know that when they come in and they're going to talk about what happened, I'm going to want to hear about 3 different things.
For sure.
Did they happen? How did they happen? And then I'm going to do much the same thing as a worker in the next section. The next follow-up session is I'm going to then work towards, okay, what's the next interventions that we're going to do?
And it'll follow the same format, right?
Right. Until they get to a point where they're saying, we think we're doing okay. We do have a sense of, I do have more of a, Dad has more of a sense of where Megan's going, what her, who her friends are. They've got a chores that seems to be making Megan feel a little bit better about it. And perhaps one of the other things that we haven't really talked about here is that maybe Dan and Megan will be a little bit kinder to Megan because Dad has noticed that too. So that's what you're looking for as kind of an ongoing piece. And the thing is that's what you're going to be talking with the family about, is how are these things happening and you're going to ask them, will they need more help? Because they may get to the point where you're saying, we're really doing okay. And then you can say, well, come back if you do need help. Okay?
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Good job with writing this note.